you will let me know, right? Hello and welcome everyone to today's Facebook Live. I'm Keiko Lim, the award-winning author from Housewife to Pilot, The Beginning. I'm thrilled to be your host. Joining me as my co-host today is the wonderful Robert Stress and our esteemed guest speaker Adam Kline.
Today we're delving into a topic that's unfortunately all too familiar: scammers. These crafty individuals cause financial and emotional distress year after year, and it's high time we shed some light on their tricks. Keiko, you have some personal experience with scammers. I'm sure people would like to hear your story and how it inspired you for us to be talking today.
Yes, that's right. Last year I was creating an account in LinkedIn, and then um, there's this guy where he has a surgeon at work photo, seemingly a respectable guy, and his well-expressed nature, leadership vibe had me intrigued. But as life often teaches us, things are not always as they seem. So the moment he suggested we take off the conversation off LinkedIn, his profile disappeared into the digital abyss. So it is yeah, it was like he vanished into thin air, leaving me with the question mark. So after I've been through a huge loss between 2020 to 2021 in my personal life, I stepped into self-development and self-mastery journey. Now I'm content where I am in life, and but he seemed to have other agenda. Cue the photos of his 11-year-old son, which for me, I personally think it looks more like 5-year-old. And the boy looks more like 5 years old. And he mentioned that he's in the English boarding school, a classic move to build a connection. As later I realized a common tactic among scammers. So that is just a glimpse into the world of scams, from stranded travelers to fake customer service call. These scammers are more creative than we give them credit for. But fret not, my friends. Today we are arming ourselves with knowledge to outsmart these scammers. So grab a cup of tea, settle in, and let us navigate this murky world together. And Robert,
So, Adam, um, Can you provide a brief overview of what identity theft actually is and why it's becoming a significant concern over recent years?
Yeah, sure. Identity theft, it can range from anything. Starting with your bank account is what, at least personally, I assumed would be the only thing that really mattered, but it extends to everything from your bank accounts all the way to your social media profiles, your mailing addresses, and your phone number. So people that, if they're able to get access to your information, they essentially can act as if they are you, when in fact they clearly are not. But everybody might be thinking that you are posting or you are making purchases, and they're doing it on your behalf and in your name with no fear of any repercussions.
So interesting. What are some common techniques that they use to obtain to actually get your personal information?
Well, these days it has become literally quite a large industry where this is what people do for a living. They can range from carding, is what typically is referred to as, where if your wallet is not RFID protected and you have a card with the chip where you can basically scan to tap to pay, or your phone is set up to tap to pay, they can be the people that are right behind you at the grocery store, at the market, and they can literally not have to take your wallet out of your pants or your purse, and they already have all of your credit card information. And on the other end of it, you can be the victim of a phishing scam. Like if you open the wrong email and click the wrong link, basically you might have just gotten your system infected. All the way to the degrees of mail fraud was one of the things I've been most surprised, is that they've actually brought back the old school, if you will, in a new school methodology where they will request forms or request information from you as if they are, say, the IRS, the SSA, FTC, or anything of the like, and use their letterhead. But the reality is, it's not actually that government entity.
And Adam, who are the typical targets of identity theft and what motivates criminals to engage in such activities?
So, great question. I'm glad you asked there, because it wasn't until after I got targeted and was basically made aware of me being the victim of it that I started looking into who are the targets these days and what motivates hackers and scammers to target these people. I was amazed to find out that the targets are basically everybody and anybody, ranging from kids, as soon as they have a device in their hand, basically, all the way on up to as elderly as you can get. Like my father, for instance, 70 years old, and he's definitely already been subsequently the victim of some fraud himself, probably because of his relationship to me. So there really isn't any specific demographics. I mean, the primary one that I thought would be the driver of it all is how much money you had in your bank account. But the reality is they buy and sell your information and store it for an extremely long period of time. That some of these people, some of these groups are extremely patient. So whereas you might not have a dime in your bank account, say you get rich based on you marrying somebody, and it has nothing to do with the money for you. You fell in love and you got married, but they've been storing your information for so long that as soon as you have a joint bank account or access to the bank account, then all of a sudden they will strike. And also, one of the things that's been heartbreaking to be made aware of for me is they'll take kids' identities that are high school age, and from there they'll wait until they possibly go to college, take out some student loans, and then once that money comes, they'll never actually even see the money, yet be responsible to repay back a debt.
Okay, I think you're muted.
Muted.
Sorry. Thanks. How prevalent is identity theft today, and are there any emerging trends or changes in the methods used by identity thieves?
It's actually amazing. I mentioned it a little bit earlier, how the prevalence at this point is it quite literally has created an entire industry where there is a large group of people worldwide, internationally, that this is what they do for work. Like they basically work their 9 to 5, but they go in for the pure sole goal of getting people's information, getting their identity, getting their bank accounts, getting their social media accounts, and they may not do anything with it the day they get it. But that's one of the trends, is what I found out, is they've become a lot more patient, a lot more diligent, and they'll basically just monitor. And once there's anything that they deem worthy of taking, then you can find out that, oh, they've had this the whole time, but there was no red flag. So that's one of the prevalent, like it's a very prevalent practice, and people are actually doing this for a full-time job. And the trends are really going towards a complete lack of ethics and morality, in my opinion.
Wow, it's overwhelming, isn't it? So, but with the increasing use of digital platforms, what measures can an individual take to secure their personal information and reduce the risk of identity theft happening to them?
Great question there. Well, if you're not already familiar with the process of two-factor authentication, I think that would be the first place to really begin. And typically you can have a two-factor authentication set up with any major platform, your bank, or even your email. So if you can have your account at least set up to, like if you have a Google Authenticator, Microsoft Authenticator, which generate new passwords, new 6-digit codes every 30 seconds. And it at least gives you an additional layer of security that's a little more secure than, say, your two-factor having a 6-digit code sent to your email, or your cell phone for a text message or a call. And honestly, what I would be very reluctant to not mention is items like YubiKeys, that basically, unless the individuals have your key, and you can have one of these on your car keys and keep one at your house in a safe. If they don't have your car keys or the one in your safe, they can't log into your accounts. Something I wish I would have gotten much earlier.
Yeah, I think everybody would be interested in that. So, a tangent to all this, or another avenue, is social engineering. Can you explain what social engineering is and how it is used in the context of identity theft?
Yeah, the social engineering aspect of it to me is still rather fascinating, and it's actually rather sad in how it's being exploited. But the reality is that people that do this for a living, they'll use the trends of it, let's say a community, a city, and they'll be able to identify certain communal values, certain belief systems that the general population of which mostly subscribe to. And therein, they'll be able to basically categorize and mark who their marks will be and be able to target based on that. So it goes from as broad as a country to a state to a county to a city to a family to the individual. And whoever those individuals are in contact with, how they typically contact, whether it's a phone call, text message, social media communications, and they'll be able to find the weak spot, if you will. And based on, like, for example, people who practice Islam, they have certain times where they are called to prayer. And they will use something of that manner in the social engineering aspect of it and use that as a weak point in which they know nobody's going to be able to defend themselves, as they're quite literally at prayer.
And how about data breaches? How do data breaches contribute to the risk of identity theft, and what steps can companies take to protect customer information?
Yeah, another great question. Data breaches are a massive, massive problem. As I've been, I had to find out the hard way in multiple cases. So when it comes to a data breach, say if Facebook, for example, has a data breach to the degree that all accounts have been compromised, any sensitive information, any and all marketing analytics that they've compiled over however long you've been using your account, if the public found out about it, the data breach itself, the financial implications therein, they would be in a law, basically a class action lawsuit where they're going to want to settle out of court for billions of dollars. And on a smaller scale for other businesses, like let's say I come from the real estate and mortgage world. If you have a data breach in your system, every client that you've ever served, or you have all their information because you're required to keep it after you do a loan or sell a home or even do a refinance for a certain amount of time. And to get all of those things kind of done, to get approved for a loan or a refinance on your home, then you're going to have to submit us your documentation as far as your job, your bank account, your income, your monthly payments from your car, to if you have any debts, if you have credit card debt, and they will legitimately be able to have any and all of that, along with their social security number, their driver's license. So it is something that I've had to become aware of that is amazingly underserved. Far too many industries, far too many companies don't actually take the necessary precautions to really protect their clients' extremely sensitive information.
So you think even for bank also, they don't really protect?
Well, banks, on one hand, I would say banks are probably the most likely of even small banks, like a credit union or a local. They're not too prevalent, at least here in Southern California, but there's still smaller banks compared to like Bank of America or, Wells Fargo. But banks are probably the least likely, as they have a lot on the line, not just the money of their clients, but all of the money that is stored in their metaphorical vaults at this point, because there's far more monetary value in the digital vault than there are at any one branch's location in their actual safe and vault at this point in time.
So, for the financial, what are the potential financial consequences for individuals who fall victim to identity theft, and how can they mitigate this risk?
Great question there. I've had to learn this one out the hard way. So I can speak from personal experience here. The implications financially, if people have your identity and they're using your social security number, your name, your bank accounts, your company, in my case, and everything that was associated. I am still, I'm on the back end. Hopefully, it will be sorted out in the near future. But I basically was made aware of this identity theft because the state of California gave me a phone call.
Mm-hmm.
And I was then told that I was not going to have to deal with the franchise tax board and have to go about it like a typical business would. And I was being assigned a individual agent who was working my case, and we would be in direct contact. No need to call 800 number and talk to somebody different every time. And I asked why, and this lady told me that I had made the top 500 list in California. I said, "Oh, cool. The top 500 of what?" And she said, "The top 500 of the people who owe the state the most money." In which case, I'm sitting there thinking, like, isn't that the bottom 500 list?
Yeah.
And yeah, so between the state of California franchise tax board alone, I'm roughly around 500,000, so 500,000, and the IRS probably 2 or 3 times that. I'm still waiting to get exact figures, but as the last time I filed my taxes was 2016. Basically, they've been using my identity for 7 years now, and I have basically been a linchpin in their operation. So they have been making sure I couldn't reclaim my identity. Like when I called to get an appointment with the IRS, I was told they no longer do appointment setups in person, and you have to do them over the phone. In which case, when they asked me my mother's maiden name, my social security number, past addresses, past jobs, I was told that my information was incorrect and they could not verify that I was who I said I was, when I'm the only me that actually is. And it wasn't until I basically asked for a supervisor and confronted them with the information of, if I'm not able to verify my identity over the phone with actual, real, truthful information, I have a federally issued passport, a state issued birth certificate, and driver's license with photo identification. If I can't come into the office to make an appointment with these documents, how can I ever speak to anybody and begin to clear my name up? In which case, after like a 10-15 minute hold, they finally digressed and allowed me to make an appointment so I could see somebody face to face.
Wow, that's overwhelming. And just thinking about what you've gone through and what you've had to unravel, it's all very reactionary, and just trying to prove who you are is a challenge, right? But for the audience, though, who maybe aren't in that situation, what would you say are some proactive steps? I know you mentioned a couple before, but like if you could go back in time, what would you want to do, both offline and online, in order to prevent identity theft?
Great question, honestly. Yeah, like I said earlier, I wish I would have taken some of these measures far earlier, but hey, it's always 2020 in hindsight, as they say. But I would start with, first and foremost, looking into, there's plenty of free ones, uh, applications that have password vaults that will store your information for your login details and your passwords. and you can set those up with two-step verification, two-factor authentication of different kinds. I would also look into having, again, like Authenticator, Google Authenticator, Microsoft Authenticator, and using those instead of just a email or a phone number, 6-digit code to verify that you are who you say you are, but really also just continuously make it a habit of changing your passwords at, like, say, every month or two, or every 45 to 90 days, depending on how much money you have in the bank. Maybe you're a little bit more incentivized to change that account information every so often. And again, I think for me, the YubiKey FIPS in particular are pivotal to, if you have things that are worth stealing and you want to start taking precautions, because this industry is only really getting started. They are becoming more and more and more sophisticated in how they are able to steal your information, steal your identity, because they're not always just going for your bank account. They might know that you have some kind of influence over somebody that they're really wanting to target. So by being able to steal your email address, your Facebook, your Twitter, your Instagram, they'll basically be able to start manipulating their real target by using your identity to speak as if you're speaking to them, but it's not you who's actually talking to them. So it doesn't, it's not always just money. You gotta really realize that these people take identities and take information, and they'll use it for any which way that they possibly can. So there's definitely steps ranging from simple two-factor authentication and having backup, well, an initial and a backup authenticator. So I have multiple layers of, I've got like 5-6 steps of authentication now for my primary account.
Yeah, it's scary. Recently I had a conversation with my daughter about having a separate bank account that's kind of a shield bank account that she links her Venmo to, and having a separate one, that's more less accessible. But also a tangent to that is having separate email accounts associated with them than what you use for people. So the things like that I've heard. But then she said, "Wow, that sounds complicated." So what with using technology and all these advancements in technology for prevention and detection and so forth, what are some potential downsides or challenges associated with all these different technology solutions?
Well, really fast to touch on that. I think what you gave your daughter as advice, amazing advice. In which case, there's services like, it used to be called Blur. It's now known as Iron Vest through a company called Abine, in which case you literally are able to have a masked phone number, unlimited amounts of masked emails, and it stores all your passwords, your login information, and there's a security policy that backs up. So you, like, if money is stolen and they are actually held responsible, or they're guilty of a data breach, if you will actually be recompensated for whatever funds are stolen. So say if you go to a landing page and it's requesting your email address so you can get the free ebook or anything like that, you would basically have the option on your browser or on your phone to have a masked email filled in to where they ask your actual email address. You would be able to put a masked phone number that forwards to your real phone number and never actually have to give them any of your information. And the best part on that one is virtual credit cards, where essentially they create a one-time usage credit card that basically is for that one specific transaction. It's linked to your actual bank account's credit card, and instead of having to give your credit card or your debit or credit card information, you get to use this one-time credit card number, expiration date, and 3 or 4 digit code on the back that they'll never be able to utilize against you. So I think that would be another thing that you can definitely do. But on that note, to your other question, is a central point of failure with, say, for me, because my, ironically enough, was my Blur account, now known as IronVest, was where everything was. I had probably 4,000 or 5,000 email addresses that I had compiled over the course of a couple of years of using the service, and I had everything stored on there. So once they were able to get into that account, as I got lackadaisical and I did not keep up, I didn't practice what I preach, if you will, and my account was not very secure. In hindsight, it was not very hard for them to really get in there. And once they got in there, they had everything. And I was not even able to get into my own accounts. I had thousands stolen in cryptocurrency. My bank accounts were cleared out before the government froze my bank accounts, and all of the rest of these things that I'm hoping are almost over. But yeah, central point of failure and a password vault or password manager like that. But also even something as simple as most people will use the same password for almost all accounts. And I would highly recommend don't do that, or even variations of that. So it can go from as simple as that to a lot more extensive. No, you muted there, Chuko.
In place to combat identity theft, and how effective are they in deterring and prosecuting offenders?
I missed the beginning of that question. What was that?
What legal measures are in place to combat identity theft, and how effective are they in deterring and prosecuting offenders?
I am very, very, very glad you asked that question, because that is something that I have become aware of basically because I had no other choice to start looking into it. And the reality of it, sadly as it is still the truth of it, that the legal measures in place to combat this are almost non-existent, because the policies that are in place for hacking, for what really equates to everything from privacy invasion to legitimate theft of your bank account, your identity, and the like, the current laws in effect, at least here in the United States, are more suggestive, and they are very, very rarely enforced. So that is why I believe this industry has grown as fastly as it has, because, oh my goodness, there basically are no repercussions. Nobody actually gets prosecuted. If you're able to find out even the group that did it or the individual that did it, if you will, it's very, very rare that there's any actual court cases. And I was amazed to find that out. And that's another reason why I've taken it upon myself to kind of champion this, because there needs to be precedent set. This is only going to evolve in this digital day and age, in an era of exponential growth, technologically speaking. We need to get in front of this, because if kids never have a chance to establish any type of real security physically, let alone cybersecurity, they're never going to have they're never going to have a chance. They're never going to stand a chance, really, because they'll basically be moving into middle school, high school, let alone graduating, going to college, perhaps. And they'll not even realize that all of their information is already not their own. And there are other people acting on their behalf or waiting for them to get rich, because then they'll strike because you didn't think that anybody had your information. So for me, the education and awareness aspects of it correlate directly into the legislation and law enforcement, because I am somebody who is going to be calling for a lot of change, because we do technically have legislation in effect, if you will, but all of the legislation that's currently in effect doesn't truly protect the little guy, if you will. The only legislation that's in effect that actually is enforced instead of just suggestive protects massive corporations like Facebook, like Instagram, like Twitter, X. And that doesn't really help, everyday people.
Yeah, that doesn't really help. It's just that recently, my Facebook account got locked out, and what they it's basically the robot asking me what they want is my telephone number. So how safe for me? I think how safe am I giving you my telephone number? Because by right, Facebook, they shouldn't ask for telephone number.
Well, that's the thing, I agree with you there, because but so many people, I mean, in this day and age, it's far more typical for a person to have basically everything on their cell phone, like every account, everything, because they believe it's secure, because they have a face ID or a fingerprint. And that sadly is misinformation and very, very, very misleading, as the reality is it's very simple for people that do this for a living to bypass face ID, fingerprint logins, let alone a PIN or a pattern to get into your phone. And if you have everything on your phone, your password stored, you're logged into your email accounts that have the password recovery to all of these other accounts, they basically have everything they need to take everything and then lock you out. So when it comes to having your phone number associated with Facebook, I'm still okay with that personally. But like I was mentioning earlier, having a masked phone number for other not so used platforms, but on Facebook in particular, for example, definitely having further authentication, like a two-factor authenticator like Microsoft Authenticator or Google Authenticator, or there's plenty of others that you can use that will basically give you a six to 8 digit code that changes every 30 seconds. So it just mitigates the likelihood of you getting you falling prey to this, and gives you another layer of security where most people do not have it yet.
So, what do you think about the public education and awareness in fighting against identity theft, and what role can communities play in preventing such incidents?
For me, that's a primary. I'm very grateful you asked that question in particular, because that's why I'm doing this interview right now. I have kind of taken it upon myself to start raising awareness, because once I started looking into it, this is something that is just simply not talked about. It is essentially taboo, at least in the society that I exist in, insofar as I live in the state of California. I'm a citizen of the United States of America. but I have friends and family all over the world. And the reality is, this is just something that it's an uncomfortable topic for people, and they don't want to even address it. Yet that only adds to the ignorance, which only makes it that much more likely for people to become victims of it. Because if you are unaware or you refuse to acknowledge the potential threats, you are only opening yourself up a massive target to to be hit next. So I'm trying to figure out a way so we can actually integrate uh, even everywhere from academia, having courses, starting even in middle school, perhaps, if not absolutely by high school, to go over simple, basic security, if you will. Not just cybersecurity, but literal security of your home network, your phones, your devices, and actually prepare the youth that is going to be our future, that is our future, to actually have an opportunity to genuinely succeed and not go out into the world as adults already being compromised. And I don't think that legislation, lawmakers, and those who are typically lobbying for such address this nearly enough. Because when it comes to voting fraud, all these other things, I know people who have literally had their relatives die, and they find out that their relative who was, getting a social security check every month, 2 years after they were actually deceased, they were still getting somebody was still collecting their social security checks. There has been cases where people who are literally been pronounced deceased for quite a long time have registered and subsequently voted in state and federal elections. How are these things not being talked about by those who are running for office? If you claim to speak for the people, are you speaking for the dead ones that are just collecting, a social security check and voting from the grave? It's just kind of how I jokingly look at it. But in all seriousness, it is something that is not going anywhere anytime fast. It's only evolved to the degrees, like I said earlier, that I was amazed that it's not all cyber. The reality that they're going old school with, snail mail, if you will, actual physical copies of mail, to do what has essentially been done on emails for a very long time with phishing scams. They just use a letterhead and make it seem like it is a official organization or entity, and they'll request you to send in certain personal private information, in which case they just got everything that they needed and you filled out the paper with your own hand with the pen. It still amounts to the same thing. So there needs to be far bigger repercussions for people that are doing this and are caught, but there also, in my opinion, needs to be new legislation and definitely a high degree of governance in which it is not simply suggestive, but actually policies that are enforced. And I think that will put a big dent and a big wall to stop all of these attackers and protect the people.
Yeah, well, I love the question because I think being educated is it's critical for everything, frankly, but particularly in this case, and then being aware. But I like the comment about the community, because really it does take a community's effort working together on this, because people have all sorts of different temperaments with it. Kind of back to the question about all this technology and how complex it can get. Some people just they want to just bury their head in the sand. So, but we can work together, because there's some people that just really are tech savvy that blaze the trail and then can help. So I think we really need to work together to prevent this stuff. And an ounce of prevention is, worth a pound of cure. And so I guess that's the segue there is, how do you recover? You've gone through this. What steps would somebody take? Okay, oh wow, I found out I've had identity theft. So what can they do to recover their identities and minimize any damage?
Yeah. And just real fast to touch on that, like they say, it takes a tribe to raise a child, right? In the same way, it takes a community to truly be protected. Like one of the biggest mistakes that I made with all of my identity theft issues was I basically had trust issues because I didn't know who was telling me the truth, who was not. And I essentially isolated myself, in which case I have to say that is the worst thing you could do. Do not isolate yourself, especially from your friends and family that are in your local community or friends, just anybody local. And don't lose touch with people, because I've actually had it to the degrees that my Facebook and Instagram were not actually Facebook and Instagram. And it wasn't until I was at a family gathering with cousins where I saw that the posts that I was seeing and the words and messages that I got were not actually from my cousins. In which case, one of my cousins said, "How is that picture on there? I've never even uploaded that photo to any social media." So that just kind of gives you an idea that, all right, as long as we actually are sticking together, there's a lot more we can do insofar as catching these little things that amount to very big things. But when it comes to the recovery aspect of it, first and foremost, as soon as you become aware of it, I would, even something as simple as a website like Credit Karma, I would highly recommend. Run something through there, if not actually be willing to run with a bank and be willing to take the hard inquiry and see if there's any suspicious transactions that you did not take. And if there is, I would very quickly contact all 3 credit bureaus, at least in the United States. It's very simple at this point to freeze temporarily your credit scores that are and everything associated with it. All of your credit cards, your debit cards, I would put temporary freezes on them and request new ones. So you can basically have whatever credit cards that they might have stolen, you will get brand new ones, in which case you cancel the old ones and all of that information is rendered null and void. Quickly change all of your passwords and look into further 2-factor authentication methods. And outside of that, I would definitely look into other options as far as there are companies and there are applications, and this is what they do is protect people, like antivirus, like anything like AVG, Norton, Nord, you name it. They have free services, even Microsoft Defender, if you really look into it. Just make sure that you're up to date. And as far as the recovery aspects of it, if you do find out that you really have had, like I had, well, I hope not many people will find out about it to the degree like I have, but if you see anything suspicious, let alone millions of dollars of transactions that you didn't make, immediately contact the, like for me, the IRS. It was the Franchise Tax Board of California and the Federal Trade Commission, all of the Social Security Administration, whoever is actually it's showing that the suspicious activity goes with, immediately file identity theft affidavits and do whatever you need to do to make sure that they know that it was not you and request an investigation. The earlier you do it, the more innocent you actually look, instead of looking like you're trying to avoid it. It just take every step that you really can, because the earlier you take those steps, the easier it would be to recover everything.
Yeah, and you mentioned, some of the breaches and so forth. So, and then, we're talking about personal responsibility and awareness, but what about corporate responsibility? How much do you think companies, businesses, who actually have, personal information of customers and clients and whatnot, what's their level of responsibility, and not just in protecting your information, but also even reporting if something comes up? And then, what are some things that they could do to enhance their policies?
I am very glad you asked that question, because in my opinion, just as much as I am going to be pretty much calling upon legislation and those who create the law, and who are supposed to be acting on our behalf to enforce the law. Today, in this day and age, the reality, simply put, is massive corporations have essentially a centralized database where just about anybody and everybody has an account. Say Facebook, for example, Twitter, or now X, for example, Instagram, for example. How about also Apple? How about Google? If they're not willing to take the measures that, in my opinion, would cost them nothing compared to a class action lawsuit, if there have been massive data breaches, is what I found out, in which clearly they were found guilty in the court of fact and not opinion, but it was never brought to actual like a legal case. So people often were never even made aware that there were data breaches and that their information very likely could have been stolen. So if they're willing to spend all this money, if they were guilty of having their databases breached and their customers, basically all of us, all of our sensitive information given out, why would they not spend a few million, let alone 10, 20, 50 million, if they're going to be willing to pay $1 billion if they get caught, to actually implement an entirely new department, in which case they have new protocols, new systems that are continuously being updated, because that is one of the primary aspects of it, especially when it comes to the corporate world. If you're not constantly updating your system, you are that much more prone and vulnerable for attack, because hackers will have had that much more time to test, pen test, as they call it, penetration test, your network, your protocols, your people. And if they get one of your people that is high enough ranking on their phone, when they connect to the network from the office and log in anywhere on their phone, anybody and everybody that, subsequently has a lower clearance level than them is now open and exposed, and anybody they serve is subsequently open and exposed. So yeah, corporate responsibility and governmental responsibility, I think, are two issues that need to be brought up and spoken to with all seriousness.
Yeah, for looking ahead, what do you see as future challenges in the field of identity theft? Are there emerging solutions or technologies that hold promise in addressing these challenges?
Another great question, because the future challenges, I mean, they're already here, is the reality I've been forced to be made aware of. But I'm actually grateful I was made aware of it. As horrible as it's been, at least I'm now able to speak to things to a degree that I previously was not able to. So, for example, my mother and my stepdad, once I went and got in contact with them, as I didn't speak with my mother for quite some time. It was only about a month and a half, maybe 2 months, I believe, that they come out of their office. They were both in the same car together. They went in to lock their office. My mom comes out and sees a man with her purse, my stepdad's backpack, their phones, laptop, basically all of that, jogging out over into a brand new Mercedes Benz. And mind you, this guy is dressed like a corporate white collar, literally, with, nice shoes, nice suit, and getting into a $150,000 car. And within 30 to 45 minutes, they had charged up to around $100,000 on their personal and corporate accounts. And the reality here is simply this: they did not need to take their phones, they did not need to take their laptops, they did not need to take the credit cards to do all of what they did insofar as the transactions. The reasons they took all of those things were to make it so my mom and stepdad could not cancel all of their credit cards, could not contact the bank, could not contact anything. So as much as it is like pawned off as an actual secure measure, for example, my stepdad and mom, their Face ID for their iPhones and their iPad, their MacBooks, within 20, 30 minutes, they were able to not only get through their Face ID, they were able to replace their Face ID. So when they went to go log in from another device, their face no longer unlocked their device. And because of all of these things, by the time they were able to call the bank, they had changed the phone numbers associated with the bank accounts. So when you need a two-factor authentication code and it says, we'll send you a text, guess what? That text was no longer going to the phone that you actually own. And it's still a problem for them. So they are now having to understand, sadly, what I've been going through. But that just goes to show that it really is very misleading, in my opinion, that your fingerprint, that your face is enough to be secure on a device that you keep essentially all of your very sensitive, very personal. I mean, anything from your naked pictures you sent your husband or something like that while you were on vacation. Sorry to bring it there, but I just want people to understand the level of, hey, if that's something, you got to take it into account. Well, my opinion, honestly, on those is just don't take the pictures, in my opinion. But just sorry to be speaking to hyperbole there, but just to give you a bit of an example, because just like those pictures, your credit card information, maybe your kids' social security, maybe you have all of that on an application on your phone just in case you need it, your medical insurance, your bank information, your anything really. If you have it on your phone, then that's another primary reason why I'm saying corporate and, legal and governmental, I'm calling on all of them really to step up the game and actually protect us, the citizens, the everyday people, because I'm pretty proficient with computers and I have a history as a hacker, but really was offensive security, which is more defensive. And I am so outmanned, outgunned, outclassed that I have no idea what a normal person with no experience with cybersecurity, let alone, computers or phones in general would do to be able to protect themselves. So yeah, I think the future challenges are kind of already here as far as like CGI. There's like, I've been made aware after going to the Lightbox Expo earlier this year, and a big reason why the actors were on strike, if you were aware of that, was because essentially with these technologies these days, they can create an entire movie with, say, Leonardo DiCaprio or Will Smith or anybody like that. Fill in the blank. The Rock, And reality is there's nobody that actually, it was not Leonardo DiCaprio. It was not Will Smith. It was not The Rock. And they're able to use their visage, their image, and basically use CGI and even more updated, innovative new technologies to the degree that nobody's face is safe insofar as the movie industry or the TV industry. So there are quite a lot of things that I think need to be addressed, and sooner rather than later. I think if we get ahead of this, it will prevent so many people having to go through unnecessary difficulties.
Well, I think one thing that really a big takeaway is just individuals need to respect this problem and understand it could happen to them. The movies portray hackers just somebody in a hoodie, and that's not the case at all. These are state sponsored. There are countries out there with armies of people that they're providing software to target anybody out there. And so that's what I think, really respecting this as a problem and not depend on anyone else. You have to, you can go find resources, but you really need to, take this as a serious thing. So, well, I for one am really have my eyes open from what you shared, Adam, and I really appreciate that. But Keiko, also, thanks for having me here to join in and participate and be part of this. So, good job.
Yeah, we really learn a lot of things in protecting our data, and like the incident that I was locked out from Facebook. Yeah, shall I give my telephone number to Facebook where it is a robot? And what are they doing with my information? Is a question mark now.
I mean, thank you both, though. Actually, I hope actually we might be able to do a few more of these, because there are a lot, as Rob just mentioned. There are actually pretty much every first world nation, if you will, has their state-sponsored entities and groups that are private sector technically, but essentially have government and military level clearance. In which case, if they go kind of off the grid for a little while, they could start their own little side hustle, if you will, their project, and they can start their own little team. And on the side, this is what they do. They target high value individuals and things of the like. And in which case, those types of no-click, like Pegasus spyware and the like, and NSO type of software, oh my goodness, it is quite a scary thing, and it needs to be addressed, and it should be these state-sponsored entities should be working to secure the people of the countries that they're serving, not seeing how they can be further exploited. So yeah, thank you guys, because I would very much like to continue to bring more awareness. And to me, the more informed you are, the more capable you are of defending yourself. And informed people are powerful people. A united people are powerful people. Informed and united, I think whatever we're asking for, insofar as changes that need to be made, will actually be taken seriously.
Yeah, true. Because it's like all these identity theft kind of things, and also scammers. Because it's like, yeah, how are they going to catch all these people? There's no way to sort of like trace them. So thank you very much for participating this interview, and yeah, we will look into having another episode or a couple of episodes. Let me check. Is there any Q&A from the audience? Okay, there's no Q&A
doesn't
from
look
the
like it.
audience. Yeah. So we shall end this session, and yeah, we'll see both of you in not too long. So we have a part 2.
Awesome. All right. Well, thank you
Yeah.
guys. Nice
Thank
chatting.
you. Okay,
Yeah.
bye.